Okay, here's example 4. So my first step, let's get rid of red, is going to be g of x equals 3 sine. I'm going to factor out how that a negative affects my shift. So I did that because a negative times a negative will give me that positive. All right, I know my amplitude is 3. Period is just 2 pi, because that negative is about a reflection. My midline is y equals -1. And then I have a horizontal shift to the right, pi over 2. And then that negative's inside, so it's a reflection about the y-axis. Okay. So let's go ahead and use all this information to help us with our scale. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, give myself a scale. Looks like my midline's -1, so I do want to give myself some negatives. All right, my first tick mark, I'm going to make pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. And I have this, this, this. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go every other tick mark, so mark your scale. Okay. And then again, I'm going to give myself that midline, which is at y equals -1. And I'm also going to give myself that shift line, just because now this is what you reflect over. Now remember, the last one we got lucky because it was cosine, it's even, it didn't really affect our graph, and we got a high point to start with, so the pattern fell nicely. Let me just remind you, the pattern for sine starts at the midline, high, midline, low, midline. And there's one full cycle. Okay, so now I have, if it was just sine, right, nothing else is happening, it would start at that origin. But I got to shift it down a unit, so now I'm on the midline. Okay, then I got, if I was going to reflect it at this point, hopefully you're okay with that, it doesn't reflect because I'm sitting on the y-axis. And then I shift it that pi over 2. So here, where those things cross, that's your new origin. All right, so that's where it's going to start. Now think about, if you're going to go to the next tick mark, we would be at a high point, right? So let's just pretend nothing else is happening and we have to go up 3 units, so we're at 2. But I need to reflect it over the y-axis, over this vertical shift of pi over 2. So instead of it being here, I need to have it go right here, because I just jumped over that, and that's doing the reflection. And that's the most wonderful thing, because now you have your pattern. You don't have to do every single point. So then I know, because if that's a high point, my next tick mark, I have to hit the midline. My next tick mark, I have to be 3 down. My next tick mark, midline. Next tick mark, 3 up. And on the right side, well, since this is a high, mid, this has to be low. Midline, high. And there you have it, your sine wave, which looks confusing because now doesn't it look like cosine? But that's because of that shift. So let's label our points. This looks like this is pi 1, 2, 3, 4, -4. This point is 0, 3. This point is pi -4. So just choose a random one. I'm going to always go back to my original. So, whoops. G of 4. Oh, no, sorry. I want to put in pi. Pi equals 3 times sine of negative pi plus pi over 2 minus 1. Okay, well, we get here 3 sine negative pi over 2 minus 1. Well, negative pi over 2 will give us -1 for sine minus 1, and we get -4. Yay! Okay, see you next time.